Welcome to Bill and Rob's An Excellent Adventure. I'm Bill Tilley.
And I'm Rob Schulte. And Bill, today we have a very special episode, and you couldn't have a special episode without special guests. And, you know, I was in Toronto recently for Fan Expo Con, and I was stationed next to these podcasters. I was like, I got to ask them the most mundane, basic DC questions that seem very big to me, but very small to them, I'm sure. You want to tell us who's on the pod today, Bill?
Absolutely. We have the hosts of the Dr. DC podcast. It's Dr. DC himself and his producer, Richard Eden.
Whoa.
Big to me, small to them is what I'm used to.
Wow. Wow. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. This is something I just threw out there when we were at Fan Expo Con. Like, what's the perfect Batman trilogy? Because it feels like to me in the Batman film verse that they could just do whatever the hell they want over the years. Like, there's been this, you know, Snyderverse and then the offshoots of Batman here and there, but like Batman feels like it's the only character in any sort of superhero movie world that you know, any given time you could just throw a rock and make a different Batman movie. So we kind of thought what would be the perfect trilogy, and you guys seem to like that idea, so thank you.
Oh yeah, no, of course. Yeah, no, I mean our podcast, we tend to do our best work when there's not one right answer.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then I brought it to Bill, and Bill's like, oh, let me open up the chest in my basement and pull out all of my paraphernalia of Batman related.
Thank God you said Batman. Oh my God.
Well,
I mean, you started saying basement and paraphernalia, and I started getting concerned.
Well, and
hey,
they make masks and
they make a genre of everything that you can get at Spencer's Gifts. So, you know, let's not pretend that the stuff doesn't exist.
I will say, Bill, I appreciate your shirt you're wearing, a Batman t-shirt.
Yeah, you have to dress the part for sure. I mean, I could easily have gotten out so many things to put up as tchotchkes behind this video display that is me, but I had to tone it down. Didn't have time to pull everything that I own out of the garage from the last 48 years and put it up on the wall.
Hey,
so
hell yeah.
That's fair. That's the dream. The dream is to not have enough time to get all of my geek stuff out of one room and into another.
See, the key is you do what I did. You get divorced, and then you could keep it all out all the time.
Actually, you know, the original dream, if I still had the drawing from when I was a kid, was to dig a bat cave in my backyard and put all my stuff in there. But I quickly learned, as my father told me, you can't dig a cave when he found me staring at about a 6-foot hole in the backyard.
But was it just because it was like the 70s and it's like, hey, kid, you can't dig a cave?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's either like go dig a hole in the backyard or just go down to the gas station and buy your old man more cartons of smokes when you're 8. So,
hell yeah.
I chose
the hole. He went
for
cigarettes and he never came back.
Yeah.
I just am imagining Bill finding the septic tank when building his bat cave.
No. I was far away from there.
Man. Yeah, instead of finding a cave full of bats and becoming Batman, he just became waste man. Yeah.
A human turd.
Yeah, it was more going to be like you would have just found my desiccated corpse because I drew an L shape, and I don't think you can dig an L-shaped cave because I didn't dig a way out. That was the one problem. I literally drew a picture of a lawn chair, a Batman costume on the wall, and no way out of this hole.
Yeah,
and starts sounding like my marriage.
Well, I was going to say, kind of sounds like the dream as I approach my midlife. You know,
you can apply the Batman mythos and way of living to so many things in life, and that's what makes him great.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk briefly before we get into this about just when comics took hold, because I was always a Marvel kid. You guys are obviously focused the podcast on DC if people couldn't gather it by the name Dr. DC. But, I mean, was it always a youth thing for you guys, Doc and Rich?
I mean, it was a little bit for me. I watched like the animated series, and I was into like the cartoons, and I particularly remember like the Schumacher Batman movies, because that was that's the sort of age I am. But I also I grew up on my dad's comics. He had like some comics left of his old collection. And so I was reading like issues from the 70s, but of like Justice League of America or Legion of Superheroes or Flash. So that was mostly how I got in. But yeah, I mean, I watched the X-Men cartoon and stuff too, but I guess just DC just got me first, and I just knew more about Superman and Batman. And then as an adult, when I started getting back in and was reading comics, that's where I started. And then by the time I was like, maybe I want to read other things, I'd maxed out my budget. The room was full of boxes, and I was like, I guess I'm a DC guy now. So yeah,
that makes sense. What about you, Richard?
I mean, it's interesting, right? So when we started this podcast, I was always like a huge dork, but I grew up like watching Star Trek and like reading like Star Trek novelizations, and like was really into like computer like PC gaming and things like that. Like the actual comic book thing, I was sort of like a tangential fan, but like on the periphery, I think, when we first started the podcast. And as we sort of got in, it was like it was a bit of like a spattering of comic collecting here and there, and then we grifted an old lady out of her dead husband's comics, and that's when
my
really
favorite type of grift.
Yeah, we really got deep into it. We bought like literally like thousands of comics off of this woman,
at like an estate sale.
Yeah, they'll call it an estate sale. And we split them 50-50, and we just took home like I now have like around 3,000, 4,000 comics now. And I mean, that's literally because like it's 75% that one day where we, on Marketplace, amazing. I got a message. It was like, hey, do you want to go 50-50 on this? And then since then, I think my actual comic collecting got really big. I mean, it's nice because the podcast allows for me to really like build on the knowledge I already had. Like, I think a big joke that we always have every year is that he tests me on my sort of knowledge of DC Comics in general, and I typically fail pretty badly. But I think like with the doing this podcast for 6 years and then getting all of these comics, it's sort of like the pieces finally fit together, and I was like, oh wait, the thing that I kept hearing sort of on the periphery while I was pretending to listen now actually like did sink in, and so my knowledge is really like connected with all of these books, and so now it's like I think my love for comics and my knowledge for DC and really Marvel too is really like bloomed over the last maybe even like 3 years.
Incredible. Bill, you're a spinner rack kid, weren't you?
Very much so. Yeah. So, I was born in 73. So I started out with Super Friends and reruns of Adam West Batman.
Hell yeah.
And back when books were still 30 and 35 cents. So ever since I was a little kid, none of my siblings or anybody around me read comics. None of my parents, they didn't do any of that. But I liked those superheroes, and that kind of stuff was cheap. So yard sales, auctions, if there were books, and there always were, my mom would buy them, bring them home. And when I could get a little bit of money, you could get a comic book for less than the cost of your house, not like it is today. So all through that, and was a DC, Superman, Batman, Flash kid, because that's what was prevalent back then. Marvel wasn't as big. They didn't have as much stuff going on, but you couldn't do much at any store or anywhere and see anything that didn't have Batman or Superman on it. And Batman was always my favorite hero. So collected all through those years, through the 70s, through the 80s. I went through direct sales, comic book stores. I've run the whole gamut up till about Rebirth. It was right at where I tapped out. Things had shifted enough that I wasn't able to financially keep up with a lot of the stuff I was doing. I did realize I was collecting just to be collecting at a certain point, and a lot of the stories, when they start to get redone and revamped and rebooted, you've kind of seen them. And so I just burned out a little bit, but I do know that the last book I stopped collecting was Batman, and it was like tearing off an arm just because I had done it for so long. It was rough, but I did not give up on the Cape Crusader. Still a fan, still get in there when I can, but loved all that stuff. So deep rooted in me is the symbol of the bat.
Love that. Tale as old as time. Jumped off at New 52.
Oh, Rebirth. That's different. Man.
Yeah, but it's that like conversation about like the rebooting of things, and I think that's usually what kicks DC people off.
Well, it wasn't what I was against, because DC's famous for rebooting. They just started over with Silver Age and just sort of didn't tell anybody, and they don't let their characters age very much at all, and the background changes. So it kind of made sense every time they wanted to go every 15 years and go, hey, we're going to we're going to hit the reset button a bit. But once you've been through about your 7th reset, it's kind of like, maybe I'll just sit this next one out for a little while and see what happens.
Well, that's fair. And, like we've talked about this, like my point is that I want to have these things because I like to read them. So I think if I ever got to the point where I was just collecting them, where I wasn't like reading and rereading and enjoying it, I think that would probably be my sign to tap out too, because that's I can't be that guy. I can't get into like, like slabbing a thing and never looking at it, or like keep it out of the sun, or like they're books. I want to read them. I want to enjoy the stories. And if I ever got away from that, I think that would be me. I'd be done.
Well, when you look in the basement and you realize I've got over 10,000 of them down there, it's like, I can start over again anytime I want and reread. But if I saw something that was interesting, that was new, I would not be hesitant to give it a shot at all.
Sure.
And just for my background, everyone knows I got into Batman during Holy Terror, Frank Miller's. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa.
I did not read that or have anything about it. But
you can tell Rob is that guy that walks into the comic book store and is not wearing anything comic related on his shirt, and the rest of us are like, "What is this? Why is he here?"
No, I just never really got into Batman or DC too much. But I tried during Rebirth. Like I was reading before that I read Identity Crisis, right? And that felt good after coming from Marvel, and then I got through the story and I was like, wait a second, and it made a few more questions than answers for me, and then started getting into Rebirth, and I was like, I am so completely lost. I need to go to my good pal Spider-Man for a moment and just feel warm and cozy, like the youthful teen that I was at the time. And so
I mean, that's really where I still lay. I think I love DC, but I think I'm still much more of a Marvel guy a lot of the times. I think my characters are still my Miles Morales is my boy, Miss Marvel, the new one. These are that sort of YA bent, I think. Is still I think where I'm the most happy for sure.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier for me to escape in the YA bent of it. I think that's the perfect way of saying it. Don't get me wrong, I love a well put together story, but I feel like it's easier for me to, like I said, escape, drift off, have fun,
and gods and lore and all the stuff that I think Reed really loves. I it makes sense why I think.
Yeah, I'm a lore nerd. I read the Silmarillion every year. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff.
And so I think that's just what DC sort of lands on more. Is DC's more about these big epic places with tons of history and all of this stuff and these gods, and I think Marvel's really about these small character stories, which I love, and I think they both really have their place, but yeah, I mean it makes sense. I mean I definitely lean more towards those YA things, but
even the Marvel stuff I tends to be the stuff that is closer to what I like. I like Thor.
Yeah,
but then I'm getting my mythology and stuff like that. I tend to go that way.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Well, you sound like you would love some Realm of X, which is what I'm reading right now. Very interesting.
Ooh, I don't know it.
I started. Is that part of this whole Krakoa era thing? Because I did start in on that, and my God, the lore.
Yeah,
so much.
Much lore. But yeah, they go to one of the realms once all of the mutants get dispersed, and I think Realm of X is right up your alley. But Bill, I think I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say that DC over the years has always been the best at embracing the fantastical superhero-ish side of things. That's why their universe has always been more colorful, more outlandish, and in a lot of ways, if you look at it within the realm of comic books, a little less believable, because the characters are a little more broad and a little more kind of in your face, more cartoony. And Marvel always slanted towards more real life. That's why right out of the gate, Peter Parker's worried about his rent and Don Blake's worried about getting the surgery. And it resonated with a lot of people. And it did with me. I've read more than my fair share of Marvel in the 80s and 90s. I'm buying as many Marvel books as I was DC because I love both takes on everything. But if you really wanted to get superhero-ish, you got a lot more capes in DC than you do in Marvel, and that's fine. You can bounce back and forth between the two, and when they occasionally throw in Armageddon series together, or you know that amalgam issue where you get to see all your favorite guys together, and you kind of see, yeah, you definitely are two different universes, but it's cool.
Yeah.
And it works out in a lot of ways. Some ways it doesn't, but a lot of times they just need to be fun. So if they do that, that's awesome.
Totally.
Well, speaking of fun, I created this fun little idea for all of us to a thought experiment, if you would, where we can come up with this trilogy of Batman films, whatever, books, cartoons for Max, the new HBO streaming service here in the United States that everyone is frustrated with. But let me give you the rules for the listeners. We're going to go around and each one of us is going to say what our first film in the trilogy is going to be. Then we're going to go around again and say what the second movie is and how it connects to the first. And then the third is going to be wrapping it all up. Now, these do not have to be, but are not limited to, already existing Batman movies, Batman comics, television show episodes, whatever we want to pull from that has a Batman-related story is on the table for this thought experiment. Now,
and you're very prepared, right, Reed?
I have it.
Do you?
But I was like
walking into the room.
I've been wrestling with it for like a week.
Oh, I just like did it this morning.
Oh, how nice and easy for you.
Well, let me tell you, I have been going, oh shit, I came up with this idea, and now I remember 3 Batman stories. I better do a little bit more research to figure out what I want to do best. And Bill, of course, is like, well, you know, it could be X, Y, and Z, or Z, Y, and X. And I'm just like, you're not helping right now, Bill. I don't know what I need to do. I remember Mask of the Phantasm, okay?
Oh, hell yeah.
Well, it wasn't
almost made it to mine.
Hey, you know, it wasn't that easy for me because when you brought this thing up and it's like best 3 Batman blank, and my brain shut down and I kind of turned into him just staring down into one of those chasms in the Batcave going, it's too much.
Well, and here's the thing, I didn't even really treat it like 3 best. I tried to really make these like the best like 3-parter. Like it feels like they work together the best.
That's kind of where I'm at too. And
yeah, I kind of went for that, but mine's a weird one, I think.
You?
Yeah, mine's weird.
Well,
yeah.
So I'm just going to put it out there. Some may say I cheat a little bit, but I'm just saying that so that you all can call me a cheater and feel better about yourself by the end of mine.
This guy, he's a cheater.
Yeah, see, got to give it to the guests, Bill. This is how we podcast. Make them feel good, okay?
Wow, we should try that.
Okay, Matches Malone. Let's just cheat the guests. It'll be fine.
All right, now... in true to form, I would like to offer our guests the option of going first or allowing Bill or I to go first.
Oh, what do you want? What do you want, baby?
I kind of want to go first because I feel like I've got some like basic ass answers.
Sure.
And then so I want to get it out first.
Great. Then how about we do it this way? Richard, you start, then Bill, then me, then the doctor.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Round robin. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. All right, let's do it. What's
is film number 1?
My film number 1. I mean, it's in its name. It feels like if you're going to tell the beginnings of, I mean, we've seen the beginnings of Batman so many times, right? I mean, how often have we seen
So you're pitching just 2 hours of unedited loop of the Waynes getting shot?
It's actually just like the first 45 minutes are them in the actual movie.
You're watching them watching the
movie.
Yeah. They're watching Zorro and then it's really just like the last like few minutes where they get shot.
What a dramatic finish.
Yeah, and then it's just like a static image of just their dead bodies for the next like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Please tell me it's all POV.
Yeah.
Tell me it's all POV.
The only way I like the video.
Jesus.
Yeah.
The way they just get up, they walk out, out of the theater, walk down the alley.
Black couch for some reason.
I think the thing for me, and a thing that I loved about the Batman most recently is I love when you get to see like shitty vigilante like beginnings Batman. I think for me that it's such an important part of telling that Batman story is like I want to see and I love it when you get that with any superhero like movie, TV show. Like the first season of The Flash, like the first Spider-Man movies. Like I love the like them fucking up. I mean, one of my favorite thing about the Batman is when he's trying to use the like glider thing and he like smashes into the bridge and like that. I love that stuff because it's like again it humanizes them and makes it because the thing that's great about Batman is that he's doing this as a human. Like he's hanging and fighting against and amongst gods, and he's a human, and the thing that like propels him to god status is his intellect, his strategy. Like I think those are the things that make Batman so great, right? And so humanizing him just allows him to go, wow, like look what he's become, because we already know who it is, right? Like I think that's part of the thing. It's like watching the movie that Titanic. It's like you get to see it sunk and then you get to watch the journey of it, right? It's like you already know where that's going to end up, but it's like, wow, look at the majesty of like these beautiful buildings, these beautiful spaces, and like all of these really rich people. It's like knowing what's going to happen, I think, is what makes it more special. And so for me, I want to see a Batman in his beginnings and the rest of the characters as well. I think one of the biggest mistakes that Gotham made was like its initial insight was like to make the beginnings of Gotham without Batman, and I thought that was such a good concept, and then they were cowards and they immediately bailed on that. So all of that to say, my first movie it's Batman Year One.
Ooh, sure.
Yeah. I want to. I for me, I think like so Batman Year One, the initial comic, 1987. I believe. But you get to like Bruce Wayne's returning after like training abroad. And he decides he's good. I mean, we got to see it a lot in like Batman Begins. There's a lot taken obviously from that. I mean, that I think like I don't know when,
and a great animated adaptation too of just like directly of Year One.
Oh my God, Year One's animated movie is great. Was that the insight of like, was that the inception of that Batman origin, or was that something that had come earlier? I can't remember. Like the Batman going away, doing the training, coming back. Like
it's not like where it comes from, but it kind of crystallizes a sort of like a tone for it. But like characters like Henri Ducard, like the people that like Batman learned from, there was always a sense that Batman like learned. He learned escapology from Zatara. He learned detective skills from Henri Ducard. He learned, fighting from whomever. Like there was always a sense that he had done that. But Batman Year One is really like, I was gone and I'm back, like in a more kind of concrete way than some of those like Silver Age comics ever did.
Totally. And I think it really like sets a tone for a lot of the rest of Batman and sets a lot of the groundwork of like, this is how you create a Batman story. And you get a young Jim Gordon, which is so cool, like who leaves Chicago and is sent to Gotham to basically like deal with the most dangerous city in the world. Like, I think that the getting the sort of like, especially as like a newer comic book reader, like, and you want to understand Batman beyond just what you've seen in movies. I think it's such a great framework for that, to really like go, okay, I get what this character is. I get what he's doing. And again, it's like, this is a Batman who's still not fighting like super villains really at this point. Like he's still doing a lot of legwork.
Still mostly monsters.
Yeah. And I think like, as much as I love the Joker and Mr. Freeze and all these incredible rogues gallery that we eventually get introduced to, I think seeing these characters like initially just like fighting like just regular crime bosses also plays into the thing that I love when they sort of propose this about Batman, which is that like he's the reason why supervillains show up, which is like he comes in and because he's in this mask and doing these fantastic things, like the bad guys need to now level up, right? And so you get these like people who are not only inspired from a hope standpoint, but also inspired from like this villainous way, which is like, oh, that's how you like make change here. Like that's how you get what you want. You become more than just a human. You become this like fantastic concept that's about fear and all of this other things. And so for me, I think that's what I've always wanted in a first Batman movie. I think you get a little bit of it in the Begins, but it doesn't really hit that sort of like, it ends up becoming a little bit bigger than I want it to be. But I think by the end, especially with the inclusion of Raish and things like that, like I would have loved for it to be still a smaller sort of like mob focused movie. Right. I think you get close to that with the Batman, but then again, you get, because I think by the end of that movie, it becomes this like huge epic with all of these.
And there's a sort of 0 year kind of thing in there with the flood. And
yeah, which is, I love that. But again, it's like, it's a little bit bigger than a story. And I think wish people would sometimes respect the material enough to let it be a small story, knowing that it's a fantastic future. And so, Batman Year One's my first movie.
Nice.
Excellent. Bill, where do you fall on film number one?
I think that's an excellent pick. Year One was in the main line. It was part of the Batman proper line. So when it was introduced, it's got numbers and everything. It just popped in, and it was a story they decided to tell. And up until that point, all the books, of course, they all alluded to Batman's past, but they would be 3 or 4 panels if you're just going to catch up on his origin. And it's like, hey, he did a lot of work, and now he's Batman, and you just go to him fully formed. You don't mess around back in the day. That's what you had Robin for. You know, he was the one that was learning and making mistakes, and Batman could be near perfect. So Year One was amazing because it let you see what Bruce Wayne had sacrificed. It gave you all this insightful look at what it took to even get started. And then he's like, you've put on 18 years and now you're just getting started. It's your first day on the job. How many of us would do anything like that for anything in our lives? And it cements Batman as what's going to get him through. His superpower is his will and his determination. He's gone beyond what most people can do. And that's what you need to do. Because back then, when you could look at the cover of Justice League and he's riding a sky cycle into the sun around a bunch of dudes that are gods flying around, you're like, what is this? And it's like, no, that's the guy you want to bet on. You want him on your team, and this is why. So I think that's an incredible choice. I love it.
Well, where are you starting at, Bill?
Well, I'm going to start out in the comic book realm. And what I had to do with this project when Rob gave it to me was I had to conceptualize the 3. I didn't know what to do with it. That's like 3 for me, 3 for somebody else. And finally, I came down to with it. This is my trilogy. Yeah. This is 3 things that I, over my entire life, have gravitated back to one way or the other. Things that are Batman based that I love and I think just put the character above all others for me. It made him at the top of the list. And my first pick is Detective Comics number 485. Which this is my copy, well worn. Wow. The cover's falling off. Now, the funny thing is, this is one of the first books I ever remember reading. And I was 6 years old when this book came out. And the title was called The Vengeance Vow. And what it actually is it is the last part of an ongoing story where Batman is trying to help Kathy Kane, the Batwoman, with people who are trying to take over her circus. And they go to battle what's going on. And it turns out he gets into a contest with the Sensei and the League of Assassins. So not Ra's al Ghul. And this is the premiere of the Bronze Tiger. They're fighting champion of this. So this story is great because it has all the elements that I immediately go to for Batman. It has detective work where he's trying to figure out what's going on and who's doing it. There's intense fight scenes between him, the League, the Bronze Tiger, and all of the mental games that are going on back and forth between the Sensei and him, and they're trying to pull off this major coup that they're trying to get. And there's a little bit of mysticism in there because Batman's familiar with the League. This is part of his past. And you kind of get a glimpse of, okay, he's really gone around the horn and met some strange and dangerous people in his life. And it's brought him to this point. And it's bright in the 70s sense because it's almost like the Batman. I say the lights are turned on. You can see him. It's the blue and the gray. But it's also very dark because characters die, people are poisoned, there's death everywhere. And at the end of the day in the story, he doesn't lose, but he doesn't win either because everybody walks away damaged and the fight goes on. Somebody's gotten a little bit over on everything, but at the end, Batman has found a way to get as much of a victory out of this as he can, but he's now got another enemy in the Tiger, and he's lost Kathy. And it's very depressing, but it's also very Batman because you realize a lot of his stories are not wins for a lot of people. They all have some kind of tragedy. They can all end in some sort of tragedy. There's very rarely a fade to black, credits roll, trumpets blare, everybody walks away happy. Batman deals in the dark, and he deals in some nasty things, and he walks away with a lot of dirt on his hands and oftentimes everybody else, if they do walk away and he doesn't break their legs, they walk away not really wanting to mess with him again. So this story really cemented in my brain what I wanted to get out of the Batman, especially going forward with comics, because I'd seen all the Super Friends cartoons, and you see the things like that where, of course, he's Batman and he's smart and he does all the stuff. But, those are the sanitized Saturday morning things I'd grown up with. You hadn't really seen him do too much tough stuff. But this is the one where he really takes all of his skills and it takes everything he's got just to come out of this one alive. So Batman in Detective Comics 485 is my first go-to. If I want to run back to Batman, this is the issue I pick up and I read again.
Hell yeah.
Well, what I like about that as a film too, Bill, is that like you're really starting like in media res, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like here's a story about Batman and you get all of these characters, and it's not, you probably don't have many preconceived notions about what you're going to get from that Batman story either.
It's tough because, when you pick up a book like this and you've realized you've never seen it before, but you're, oh, this is the last end of a chapter. I've missed something.
Yeah.
Now, 70s books would always give you that little bit of epilogue to bring you up to speed. You could still have missed a lot, and the characters thought to themselves a lot in their thought bubbles. They would keep you going along, because even the Stan Lee motto of every comic could be somebody's first comic, they gave you that lift up, enough to get into the door and keep going. And if it was too confusing, you could drop off. But it was also, if you got a last chapter of an issue, that could be great because you've read it and you could go on. If you wound up having a first part of a story and then your mom didn't go to the store that week, or that wasn't in the bag of comics you got from the yard sale, it would drive you insane. It would drive you absolutely insane. And it would set you off on a path of trying to find these things if you had any means to do so. And there's books that I had parts 1, 2, and didn't get those second parts for 20 or 25 years later till I grew up and got a job and could afford to buy them on my own. But this book is really a great one, and it's got great characters, and it's not Batman's mainline characters. So the fact that it's not the Joker or the Riddler or any of that, it's a bunch of people who are dedicated, and then there are also people who are zealots and fanatics and all the stuff that's human, but at the extreme edge of what humans can do. And Batman's right in the thick of it because he's the guy to do it. It's great. I love it. Every time I pick it up, it never fails to make me happy.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go with a portion of my favorite Batman story. I went back and thought, what have I actually read from Batman? What have I seen? What affected me most? And I think like I am not alone here in enjoying this, but my first movie would be just about the first half of Long Halloween. Up until Bruce Wayne, or it's going to fade out when Bruce Wayne gets plucked by the rose from Poison Ivy, right? So what I'm thinking is we do a Dune sort of situation where at the very beginning, it's part 1, right? Like everyone understands this is going to be an honor. We're not going to get the whole story here, right? But the first movie will be that top half of Long Halloween. You've got a nice crime thriller mystery happening. You're meeting all of these characters. Yeah. If you don't know who Harvey Dent is, then you're just getting a good, like, troubled character that Batman has to work with alongside a seasoned Gordon. There's glimpses to other villains, but you're really just sticking with the crime family in this one. And I think it kind of goes to show you that Batman has a lot to deal with. He's seasoned. You're not getting the origin story at this point. And your big like action sequences are mainly going to be Batman and Catwoman, right? You're not getting much else. And as much as we have seen Catwoman in a couple of movies, you don't get like, what is it? The closest we've got to them fighting is in Batman Returns, like in any sort of like significant, memorable way for me. I mean, I guess there was anyway. Point being,
there's just little scuffles in some of the other ones.
Yeah. And so, but you could have like a real tete-a-tete, I think, in this one, and people wouldn't be as expecting as much. But I think the world building in that first half of Long Halloween really would set up something that will be delivered a little bit further in this trilogy. But what I would like to add, if I'm taking artistic license, is that you get glimpses of the other gods in the DC world. Like maybe a news story about Wonder Woman or something that's playing in the background. So it feels like it's in the world. I
see what you're setting up here. Okay.
And you get a little bit of, like, say, villains or Arkham and stuff like that. But that's where we kind of trail off, is the Poison Ivy part. So hopefully it entices people, even though it doesn't have a concrete ending.
Right.
I love that. That's a great option.
That's awesome, Robs.
What's good about that is there's a lot of that sort of like year one stuff in there, like, right? Like initial sort of like.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with Long Halloween, right? That's the transition from like crooks to villains, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. So
Calendar Man.
You do get little sprinkles of it, especially just in the first half, right? Like you're not fully into like supervillain territory.
Did you watch the animated movie?
I did, actually, on the flight home from Toronto.
Oh,
but
nice.
I had read it years ago and then refreshed myself before this podcast, because there are, like, I forgot the significant differences that are in the book compared to the...
Yes. Yeah, which we're not really a proponent of usually. I mean, I think they do a good job there, but at the end of the day, like, I always like just allow the thing to be the thing.
I'm not 100% anti changes. My problem is usually the reason they make changes. It's just like, well, people read it, they'll guess the twist, and it's like no one cares. Like, it's just do the story. It's fine.
Yeah.
But
for sure. And I do think that, like, you know, the Calendar Man, like, you know, she could be this, but he could do this, and then it, like, really pays off so much better at the end of that. But more on, you know, maybe more on Long Halloween later. So, Doc, what's your first movie?
I have gone in a drastically different direction than
Big surprise.
So when I was trying to conceptualize what kind of 3 stories I'd want to turn into a trilogy of films, I mean, I picked 3 stories that normally don't connect to each other at all. But B, I also wanted to take for granted that we've had whatever it is, like 8, 9 Batman films, that like there's some we could take for granted that people know some stuff. You were saying like we've seen Batman's parents die a bunch. Like there's things we just know, but there's a lot of stuff in Batman films we've not seen.
Sure.
And it tends to be, and my ears perked up when Rob talked a little bit, little hints of the bigger universe. It tends to be a bigger Bat family. It tends to be Batman's friendship with Superman, or like these other kind of things. That tends to be the stuff that falls by the wayside when we make Batman movies. So I wanted to envision a world where in the first movie we kind of just go in with like full comic book Batman, just who he is, and then over the course of some movies maybe strip him down and force him to build back up again. So almost like taking what you would maybe normally do with a Batman trilogy and putting the first part in the middle and like kind of the end part first. So have him start in this real comic booky big world kind of place, steal that stuff from him, and have him like rebuild the Batman again.
Sure, yeah.
That's kind of where I was coming from. So on that note, I've cheated slightly here. But
I love
this
cheaters.
guy's a cheater.
But for my first film, I'm throwing Tower of Babel out there.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Okay. Love it.
Obviously with the kind of artistic license of even more centering Batman, because Tower of Babel, because it's a JLA story, we feature a lot of characters. I'd want to more center Batman in it. For those listening that maybe don't know this story, the gist of it is that Batman, because he's always prepared and always strategizing and always slightly paranoid, has contingency plans, to neutralize or take down every member of the Justice League. And in Tower of Babel, those plans get stolen by Ra's al Ghul and put into place. And basically the Justice League comes under attack by Batman, quote unquote. They adapted this into an animated film called Justice League Doom, where it was Vandal Savage puts together a sort of Legion of Doom, and they're the ones that steal the plans and go after the Justice League. Like that, all of that kind of stuff. But basically, the idea is that the things we know about Batman, his hyper preparedness, his intelligence, that he's this amazing scientist, all these things he becomes his own worst adversary. When as soon as these things get out, like how could the Justice League possibly, quote unquote, deal with Batman? And it breaks a certain amount of trust between Batman and the Justice League, and there's like fallout of those things. And so, like I was saying, I kind of envision it of, wouldn't it be cool to like open a Batman movie with him like high-fiving Superman? Like, aren't things good? You know, like here's the thing. And then over the course of the movie, all this stuff comes out. And even though Batman can be victorious at the end, like his relationships are a little fractured. There's tension. People don't trust him. Does he trust himself even? How did his plans get stolen? In the way that that Bill was describing too, like a Batman story where he ekes out a victory, but it's not like people aren't unscathed. Like it's not like a total victory. It's there's scars, there's stuff moving forward from it. And so that's my kind of like insane pitch, is to basically go really
from the top,
really wide, as if Batman has been doing it for however long, and start breaking him down. And I'll just throw out there that there's a sort of lurking hand behind, I would imagine, the events of this thing that reveals itself over the course of this
You're not
trilogy.
going to do what I think you're going to do. Oh,
we'll
my
see.
God.
We'll see.
Well, hey, tune in for the next summer blockbuster.
Yeah, he's
What's
making
next?
the biggest series of all time.
Yeah, I have like David Fincher rules. Like I don't make a movie for less than $200 million.
Truly, yes.
Well, we all love Da Finch Man, so it's going to be great.
You just need a grant from the Wayne Foundation.
We love it, a Finch Man.
We love it, a Finch Man.
See, I love all that. I love that because your idea of kind of jumping in media race, as much as I love all these films, and you have to do a certain amount of origin story, when you've had 342 Batman things over 80 years, we all get it. We all get the gist. The best parallel I can think of that's what's good about that is, why can't they do that on the other side of the street with Marvel with the Fantastic Four? Why is every movie's been an origin movie? Like start them out in the negative zone and just go to town.
Yes.
And you can do that. And it's what you've done is by opening up Batman's world, he has all these things and these people, and he's a solitary figure, but he's never alone, and he's never been alone from day one. And one of the best things about, for me, which you've tapped into with this, is all of Batman's resources, especially like when he's going up against Ra's al Ghul, as he does in this story. Ra's has a worldwide organization. He has money, he has power. Bruce Wayne has worldwide organizations and money and power. He just doesn't overtly use them the same way Evil does. So the idea of whenever you put him in a situation where he I've got billions, you've got billions. I can pull government contracts and sneak in this, and I can put all my stuff against you. When he's fighting something with everything he's got, plus the family, that's a really amazing thing. And your idea could be everything from a 3-part trilogy movie on its own to a great 10-part limited series on something. It would be amazing.
Man,
did not go small.
I never do.
No.
Well, Richard,
neither my shirts nor my ideas go small.
You're talking to the right crew over here.
No, I'll tell you, there's value in everything you've said, because my wife and I, for the last year or so, we started watching a cartoon before we went to work just to get ready for the day. We watched all the Super Friends stuff, and then we went through the animated series. Now we're into Justice League, where he's with all these people around, and over the whole thing, like, she knows I love Batman, and she's starting to see things, and we'll get into an episode where, like, it's his brain that's thinking his way out, and I'll just say something like, "Never bet against the Batman," and she'll just go, "Yep."
That's exactly.
That's cool. You're getting it.
Well, Richard, what's your second film, and how are you connecting it to year one?
And so here's the thing, like, I'm sort of doing what I think Reed's doing with his first film and with the second, which is like playing off the fact that you've now, I mean, look, I wanted to do an origin story that sort of like gave you the nuts and bolts like Batman that I think I wanted to see. That sort of like just became a definitive origin from year one for me as well, but also this sort of movie I'm building. Now I'm sort of building the second movie I've always wanted, which is like, okay, we all have seen a lot of Batman. We've seen a lot of Batman villains. So let's go in with that, but let's answer the question that I think everyone has after engaging with Batman for so long, which is like, this guy's crazy, right? And I think that's a big piece of it for me. So it's like you watched this guy deal with loss and grief in a way that is destructive, right? And as much as we try to say that like, oh, he's trying to make his community better, he's not. He's just dealing with grief in a destructive way. And so I wanted to do a second movie that's really about, I mean, it gives you the opportunity to open up to a larger world. But at the end of the day, like it's a smaller story about a mental health problem, I think, and addiction. And I think that I wanted to do a story that addresses sort of the what makes a person want to do a thing like this. So I'm sort of doing it's a little bit of a movie, a little bit of a video game. I'm doing Arkham Asylum, both the video game as well as A Serious House on a Serious Earth. So sort of both the game and the book in there. And what I love about that is, again, I love a bottle episode. I love putting him inside of his own mind through this facility, right? You get obviously the Joker being sort of the manipulator in this entire situation. So you're getting a taste of the Joker, but he's just more of the actual foundation of this journey into his own psyche. You get to see all of these other villains. And I think it allows for a conversation about the larger DC universe, which is like, not only are these all of the work that he had done in that initial film of inspiring people, inspired all of these villains now. And so now he's having to confront them all in the singular location, as well as having to deal with the fact that it's like he is there because he belongs there. And you also get to do this, I think, that we love about the Batman Rogues Gallery, which is that like all of the best Batman villains are sort of like a distorted, fucked up reflection of his own faults. And so maybe it's not all the exact same that were in the books or the game, but it's like you get to see maybe the Penguins in there, maybe the Joker's in there, right? Like you could see Mr. Freeze. It's like all of these different versions of the things that made him Batman, and are all the darker reflections of a thing that he could have become and wasn't. And so it's a way to also, I mean, God, I love like a lack of hope in a second movie where it's like we don't end it, right? Like who knows? The ring of power has been now like darkening of the souls of everyone around you, and maybe we can't do this alone anymore.
The Empire struck back.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Wow.
And
dude, I sat at the drive-in in 1980 going, I don't know how they're going to rescue him in 5 minutes. This movie's almost over.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so I think for me, it's about a way to sort of like go, okay, no, this isn't like a good thing. I mean, this is the Mad Men thing, right? It's like, this isn't a guy you want to be. This is a broken man who's dealing with addiction and grief through all of these things, and being reflected back on him to be able to actually confront this and go like, oh no, like I'm not making the right choices right now, but it's the only when you're a hammer, everything's a nail, right? And so I think that's what makes that book and that game so good, is that it's not setting him up to be the like idealical like sort of hero. He's a broken person who's doing a hard job. And I just, I think for me, like I want to definitely do that dark version of it. And maybe you get some supernatural in there. There's lots of really fun ways that you can play that. But I mean, that book, like it fucked me up. Like it was really, it's a great way to address things like that through Batman. And so, that's my second.
That's awesome. That is so cool.
That's brutal, because that book sat on my shelf, and it was one of those books that's like, I don't really want to see the cover of that book. I own it, and
I'm not jumping into mine, Bill. Bill, I'll give you your time. No, I just want to say I thought you were going to steal what my second movie is, Richard. Not that it would have been a thoughtful theft, but I was like, how am I going to come out of this if he's going to take what I had? But I'm so glad to hear that like we have similar viewpoints of what our second film's going to be. But until then, Bill, what is yours?
Well, for me, since I'm definitely not following the format of what we set out to do here, but it will all tie together, I think, at the end. So I have a way to kind of put this all into its perspective. But the second Batman thing that I always run to when I want to lose myself in Batman is this. This is my original Power record.
Whoa!
Oh, shit.
Holy shit! He's bringing vinyl into it.
So this is number 8155, so 1975, and it has 4 stories on it, all featuring each one features the Catwoman, Joker, Scarecrow, and the Riddler. And I listened to this record beyond ad nauseum because, don't have TV and streaming and all that stuff. You had books, but you don't have a lot of them, but you get your record. And the thing about this record is, when I was a kid, there's parts of this record scare the living shit out of me because the voice actors, the way they turn up the creep factor in this was great, to the point where I would take whatever action figures I had, put this record on, and I would act these stories out. They're short. They're simplistic. They run about 15 minutes each, but each one of them is a little shred of Batman's world. And just like the comic book dealt with a lot of normal people, even though they're assassins and highly trained karate people, they're still people. Nobody has any mystical powers. But now we're into the rogues gallery. And there are things in this book that are just the essence of Batman. He is fully formed in this. Robin's with him.
Right.
There's a challenge. Each villain is its own thing. But what they were able to do is they painted this picture in your head and you had to fill it in. Now, some of these later came with a comic book and you could read along. And they were done by Neil Adams, so they're spectacular. And I highly suggest anybody that finds them look at them. But you ran with it in your brain to the point where, if I played the Riddler part, which is if music be the food of death, there's a scene where he is breaking into a hotel room in the middle of the night and Batman and he are first speaking in very hushed tones. I couldn't do it. I couldn't listen to this at night. It just scared the living hell out of me because I thought he's coming into the window. And it was great because this is the kind of stuff that when I see, especially movies or you want to make new material, they've done a really good job with a lot of things over the years, and I like them in their own way. I like Jack Nicholson's Joker in its own way, and Heath Ledger, and everybody that's done these things, and the Keaton Batman, the Pfeiffer, all these things are their own. But for me, a lot of them are missing a little bit of a core thing, and I think it's the thing that you find in this, and that just comes from being so immersed in it. Catwoman's reasoning, who she is and why she does what she does. In this one, she takes a bet from a bunch of gangsters that she can evade Batman and get back and get paid. The Joker's just being the Joker. He wants to steal a clown painting and burn everything to the ground. The Riddler just wants to fool Batman, but everything he does is a death trap. They've all got their operandi and it's up front, but it really just, by shortening it down to this 148-minute adventure with all these 4 things, it just marinates in what Batman and his rogues gallery can be. And it strips it and it doesn't let it get too complicated, which I think a lot of media is too easy to do. And a lot of books are too easy to do. Back in our day, if we got a 3-issue miniseries, that was a long wait. But if you got a 2-year story arc, that's a lot of investment. And this investment, not everybody can put in these days, especially if you don't know it's there and you don't know to hop in. And if you're going to do those kind of things, that's fine. I think they'll lead themselves more towards long form stuff. But when I just want to do Batman's good at his job. And this record taps into his detective side, his fighting side, his logical side, a bit of a fatherly side because Robin's in it. And, Robin's always been a take him or leave him kind of thing for a lot of people. For me, he's always part of the mix. But I like Batman on his own as well. And this is the thing, especially if you're a younger person, which I was when I got this thing, it gives you a great insight into what Batman and the Batman world, the superhero, supervillain world is all about. And it's still a thing that you also understand because their motivations are good. They're all on track with who they're supposed to be. And they're all things we can all relate to. So I think this is the kind of stuff, if you take any one of these, would be a great jumping off point for, I know for sure, like any animated 60-some minute movie would be a great thing to come out of this. But if you just want to get into this. And the actor who, and sadly, I don't know his name because none of these were credited, but the voice of Batman on this record is as much a voice in my head as Adam West or Kevin Conroy or Alan Russell. So it's a great piece.
Here's the thing that I love about that idea of kind of like 4 short stories is that if you were to adapt that into like one film, that's not dissimilar to the structure of The Dark Knight Returns, which is, like it's 4 issues and your adversaries are basically Two-Face, the mutant leader, Joker, Superman are essentially like, that's how that story's structured. So you can still take these 4 things and weave a through line through them, or like a theme, or like one kind of ultimate lesson. Like there's like an established setup for doing that already. So like I actually kind of like it as an idea for like for one piece, is to have like, you're almost getting like I guess the Long Halloween is similar in a way too, but you're almost getting like a couple of months in the life of Batman. It's like, now it's fucking Poison Ivy. Like now it's goddamn Scarecrow again. Like, there's never a break.
Or like that animated series episode where it's like the kids telling their stories of experiencing Batman. I forget the name of that one, but like it can be told. There are ways to like bridge the gap in a longer narrative about these 4 short. That's great, Bill. That's so cool. And I want to find that. Like if you digitize that, I will listen.
What do you mean if, Rob?
Oh, okay. Well.
There you
go. I'll jump into mine. And yeah, I love the idea of playing with what's going on in Bruce's head, right? Like what is the issue he's dealing with? And if we remember back to the end of my first movie where he gets pricked by the rose thorn and it's Poison Ivy, I would like my second movie to fall mostly under the storyline of Batman ego. Now, I don't know when the last time any of you have read that, but of course, if anyone is unfamiliar, it's essentially Batman has lost a lot of blood due to a fight and is hallucinating in the Batcave, talking directly to the Bat, like essentially the Bat side of his persona, and talking about and trying to like reason with like, well, maybe the Bat can kill, but Bruce Wayne doesn't kill, because that's the only way you're really going to stop, say, the Joker or crime in general. And I think that would be such a way to like, Batman's already like in a coma of some sort, right? At the end, at this portion of Long Halloween, we don't actually get to see what's going on in his head. I think this would be a great way to do that while also seeing like what's happening in Gotham without Batman, and with Bruce being in a trance, like signing over all of his money or whatever and making the bank happen and all of that sort of stuff. Right. So we can like bridge that gap, and how we see the glimpses of the other bigger world of DC in the first one, that kind of plays out even more, but it's always like the superheroes at arm's length from Gotham, but maybe the villains are coming up. And in this idea of like, it wasn't just petty crooks. Now, like we're saying, fear instills these bigger types of killers, because as we see later in Long Halloween is when like everyone's kind of in that boardroom area, but we'll get there. I think the meat of this is pulling Bruce out of the story. Like what happens when Batman, and there's been multiple stories when he breaks his back and like crime runs or has his back broken, and then crime runs rampant while he's healing. You know, all of these things. But I think being able to separate those two, what's going on in real life, what's going on while he's hallucinating, would be a great way to tell a story, especially in the second portion of this trilogy. And the more I think about it, this is like a week-long event. My story's like on television. Like it's like when they did The Shining for 7 days. That's what mine is turning into. But hell yeah. Yeah, I think Batman Ego, if you haven't read it, check it out. And it would make for a good adaptation for the middle of my trilogy.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. It's always fascinating when they let you get a real long glimpse into Bruce Batman's thoughts, because I know I've sat there a million times and they've done it before. It's in Dark Knight Returns where basically Batman says, every one of the one you've killed, it's my fault. They're all on my hands. Because he could have. At any point, he could kill one of these people and they would be gone. Police people, they have to do that on the job and it's just part of what they are. But we look at it and go, especially if it's in such a realistic view and like, well, yeah, why don't you kill the Joker? You would be done and you don't have to deal with this bullshit night after night. But he can't. And you have to see these kind of things to realize that it's not that he won't. He really won't. It's that he can't. He can't bring himself to do this thing, which is in a way counter to everything he's trying to do in his life. So for every one of these actions, there's always an opposite. And just like you said before, like Tower of Babel, of course Batman's going to research what could happen if one of them goes bad, because Superman's always going to look at you and go, I'll never do that. But then at the same token, he's the one that's going to walk in the Batcave and give you the ring made of kryptonite and go, you're the only one that gets this. Like, and you don't know. You don't want it to happen, but it could happen. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Batman's the guy who's willing to sit there and go, I'm going to plan for the worst and I'm going to take the shit that comes from it. And that's a big price to pay. And he's going to have to take a lot of grief and a lot of guilt. And as much as he trained his body to be Batman, to get a look inside the mind that could carry that kind of weight, because I don't think I could carry it, not for a second. What person could? And to be able to see any of that is just fascinating.
Bill, I couldn't have said it better myself. Doc, you're up.
We belong together, Richard. My second film is also based on Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
Largely the book, but because I'm not total chaos incarnate, I understand that the movie maybe needs a little more linear action. And so the video game has a little bit more of that than the book does.
Which is why I think I did the same thing. Yeah.
But that's pretty much the only reason I'm even tossing the video game in there. I'm coming from the same place, but it's just a reminder of where I'm going with this is Batman had it all. And then we're going to strip stuff away. So last movie at Tower of Babel, we're stripping away some of those friendships, those relationships, and some of his own confidence in himself. Not just that his plans had gotten stolen, but is he even like doing the right kind of thing? Like, was he wrong to keep those contingents? Like all of that kind of doubt. And then to come into this movie and be basically like lured in a solo adventure where he's like, I got to figure my stuff out. And he's lured in a moment of weakness to the asylum and confronted with these questions of, are you as bad as the people that are in here? Like, are you sick? Are we sick? Are we the sane ones? Like, who's all of this thing? And, the book is so, like, the art is so, like, horrifying and trippy and stuff.
We're still owed like a horror superhero film.
And I think you can like weasel ways into that via like fear talks and Joker, like call it whatever you want. I think you could enjoy some of those things and have Batman really going through this like dark night of the soul kind of adventure. Now, like I said, I understand it's a movie. I've got a budget like the Finch Man, so there got to be some fights. I wouldn't go like Joker monster fight like in the video game, but there's got to be like maybe he fights Bane, maybe like stuff that's not in the book, like some stuff just to satisfy those things. But mostly what I would want to see out of it is Batman come out the other side, leave the asylum physically, but basically agree with the Joker at the end of it. And the way I'm pitching this is that basically at the end, Batman hangs it up.
I thought you were saying Batman.
No, but yeah, Batman hangs himself at the end of the second movie. No.
Tell me something.
Yeah. Well, first Batman pissed himself at the Grammys, and then he hangs himself in his garage.
But it's all just for autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah.
So.
There it is.
Batman would like hang up the cowl at the end of it. He would be like, no, like they're right. I dealt with this, Gordon. Like they're back in their cells, but like they're right. I'm done. And he's like completely alone. We've like broken the idea of the bat, and he's done. And that's why, like, because I'm a sucker for an Empire Strikes Back kind of thing. Like, I love that shit. So, and again, there's a mysterious like guiding hand. Like, like it looks like Joker orchestrated, but there's someone is making these, like someone is trying to destroy Batman's world here. So, but who?
Ooh, I don't know.
I have an idea, but I don't want to say it now.
So,
yes,
my last film has already been sort of teased at. It's even been mentioned by name.
Ooh.
But at this point in my series, Batman's been beat to shit for 2 movies.
Right.
He's got to hang up the cowl. He's also going to
hang himself. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to hang himself at the end of the second movie.
Hang out.
And if you and I do the same third, it would be insane.
I doubt it, but I'm really excited now.
Is there a scene where he's trying to pick the perfect utility belt to do this with? Because I'm going to say don't get the capsule belt. That's going to poke you real hard. It's going to hurt.
Could you imagine trying to tie a noose in a thing with that many pouches?
Ooh. Nope. That Keaton belt, that grapple gun's just going to spin around at the last second and shoot right up your nose. And that's not going to be a good way to
go. But what I want to do is I want to basically make it so that Batman at the end of the second film realizes that maybe maybe he shouldn't be doing this anymore. And that's why the third film, it's a comeback, baby. It's The Dark Knight Returns.
Well, I mean, the comeback of comebacks.
Yeah. 10 years, he's been retired. I think we get to really now address, it's like he's coming back, but like, are the ways in which he does things even the right way? He's been convinced to come back, but should he even be back? But he feels like, again, we got a taste of that larger world. Superman's out there. He needs to beat the shit out of Superman. But again, does he even understand why he even exists anymore? And I think that what's great about, as much as I don't really like Frank Miller, I think like at the end of the day, like this version of Batman is such the like, this is the, if year one's the foundation for his origin and like where he came from, Dark Knight Returns the framework for how do you portray Batman. It's that dark version of him, right? And I think what's great about this though is that you get hope though. You get Carrie Kelly coming in and inspiring him, and like who's like, we need a Robin. Somebody needs to come in here and do this. And so you get a little bit of hope at the end, I think. But there's no Martha in this story. You're not getting the Batman.
I mean, that's super. To be fair, that's also not really in the Dark Knight Returns.
No, I know. I know.
You really don't want to throw a "why did you say that name" in this?
Why did you say that name? I just want to get a look at you. He did, but I think that. I mean, there's a reason why it's basically like the best Batman story ever written. I mean, as much as I don't always want to give Frank Miller credit. Like it's an incredible story. And again, you get to beat the shit out of Batman and Superman. And it's like, it's just like, it's never ending, this assault on me. And it's like, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm exactly the same as all of these things that I've been fighting. And the reason why this is when you can really bring in a Robin. And I think I like the idea of Carrie Kelly's the first Robin, and that's how you end. It's like what Batman needs is hope, and he gets that through a Robin.
I don't hate that idea.
Yeah,
and
so it kind of can. Yeah,
it ends almost the way that the Nolan ones did, which was it ends with a Robin, but Batman's still around.
Yeah, you should use your middle name.
Yeah, what, Robin?
Yeah.
No. But I love that, and I think there's a chance for hope. There's a chance.
We've disgusted Bill over here.
And maybe the rest of Batman is really like the 60s Batman. And that's the one, when Robin comes along, that's when you can get the like hopeful Batman.
He's
and the
finally
fun.
Through the darkness.
Yeah. And so,
love it.
Yeah, that's my pitch for my trilogy. You get a brutal beginning, you get dealing with mental health, and then the thing that brings you out is other people.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a perfect trilogy. I mean, it really, like, I love how well-rounded that is, and like leaves you on a non-downer for like such a downer leading
without
up
being
to it.
Without the finality too of a final movie, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Bill?
thematically, we're very similar, but we picked totally different stories.
Okay,
I just want you to know.
I can't wait.
Then what you're going to do is probably what I think you're going to do.
Bill, where are you
Wow.
at?
Rich, it's amazing that Rob decided to dovetail us together because I actually made a point when we started thinking about this to stay away from Dark Knight Returns. Not because I don't love it, because I do. I was in Walden Books in 1986. I didn't have the money to buy that paperback when it came out, so I would go to the mall and read it as much as I could before my mom made me leave until I could finally get enough money to, and I still have that book. And as much as it's great, but it's been such a cue for Batman for so long that I chose to give it a rest. It's too easy for that, but
I'm giving people the trilogy for the people who are not gigantic comic book nerds.
And that and that makes what you've done. That's a perfect choice.
You'll get rehired, Rich.
Yeah, my third thing.
I'm commercial. I know what I am.
Well,
DeFinchman will love working with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So ironically enough, my third pick is actually an episode from the Batman 66 TV show.
Oh, hell yeah.
Ooh.
My third pick is the premiere Catwoman episode, The Perfect Crime.
Whoa.
Better Luck Next Time.
I love the insanity of your trilogy.
Yeah,
it's a wild trilogy. It's great.
Yeah, because part of the reason that I run to this episode is I also had the Viewmaster of this episode.
Oh my god!
And
I can imagine that that's how it's like starts. Yeah,
and we were like, we could do this from any media, TV, movies, whatever. And he was like, Viewmaster, Final.
Yeah. His response was yes.
Yeah.
I will do any medium.
Yeah, it wasn't difficult once I decided to go completely off the rails on this. But yeah, and I looked at this thing a million times, because with no sound and nothing to go by, I would watch the reruns before school once in a while. And of course, I'm little enough that I missed all the camp. It's all serious to me. It's Batman. But this is the thing I looked at over and over again. And there's so much great stuff in there. Batman has to go up against the Catwoman and her schemes. Robin's held over a tiger pit. Batman's going to get eaten by another lion. He has to climb out of a pit to save his own life. He's up against a wall of spikes. They have to chase her through a cave in a death race. It's an amazing visual to look at when you're looking at it one frame at a time over like 18 pictures. It's crazy. Yeah. And you got to look up to read the little thing that tells you what you're looking at or have the little book that you could go by. But then I watched this episode and I remember it because I think it's a great essence of what Batman is. And Batman 66, Adam West, they take a lot of shit. They take a lot of shit from a lot of people. And I think that comes a lot more from preference, which is fine if that's not what you prefer. But coming up through all this, I got to say, and I've said it before, Adam West is my favorite Batman. And I don't say that to be contrary. I say that because out of all the media, his personification of Batman and Bruce Wayne has come the closest to what I think of in the comic books when I listen to this record, when I read these stories. He does a great job of it. He's a good-looking guy. He's smart. He plays Bruce a little foppish. He plays him as a different character. Batman is completely straight. Everything he does is spot on, and he's down the line serious about what he does. And then the rest of the media embraces that colorful world and just goes nuts with it. And this story is great because it's got danger, it's got excitement, it's got thrills, it's got everything that you look for in a Batman story when you think of a fully formed issue. And even with Robin in it, he's not a doofus. He plays his part. Of course, he gets captured, and that's kind of what Robin's there for. But, Batman's ready to go to the wall to save him. He'll do anything. And then they come together as a team at the end and do what they do best, which is they pursue crime to the bitter end. And this is also not a good happy ending because technically Catwoman dies at the end of this issue. She's trying to get away and she jumps a chasm and she can't hold on and they can't save her. And she's gone. And for all I knew as a kid, like, she's dead. She ain't coming back. So it falls right into that thing again of they were able to take all the stuff about Batman and put it together. It's a win, but it's also a bit of a loss. And it's portrayed as tragic, but then they still also find a way to bring some lightness to it. And so you can see all these things happening because it is the 66 show and they light it up. They don't play Batman that much in the dark. When they do, it's great because then it gets a little creepy and spooky and it looks nice. But all the characterization is there. They did what they had to do with the media to make it successful for television and color and give something for everybody. And that's what they did. And it shows me, when you look at these things, there's so much about Batman that's great. And if you stick to what the points of him are that worked, his dedication, his commitment to crime, yeah, it's a little crazy. And you got to acknowledge that he lives in a crazy world and does a crazy thing. And this is how he pulls it off. Your story will work if you stick to those points. If you take it too far, which is one thing of my complaint across all modern Batman movies, especially, you don't get a lot of Batman. You get a lot of Bruce Wayne and you get a lot of villain, but you don't get a lot of Batman. And that's where they fall short. And the show let you do a lot of that. So if you can stick to these things, you're halfway to a winner. And then you can create new stories and create all your things and do all your swerves and everything about that. As long as that little bit of caricature. And with 3 seasons of that show, God bless Adam West. His voice, the way he did it, Batman's dedicated. He's all about justice. He's all about serving the people. Yeah, it's the Batman that fights crime in the daytime, but that's not a bad thing if it's still Batman.
Yeah.
Because he'll kick your ass in the daytime just as well as he will at night. Yeah. So
I love a Batman that parks respectfully and then runs in a building. Yeah.
Oh yeah. He'll chastise you for no, officer, it's okay. I'll pay that meter. We got to do our part. The last time I watched the Batman movie and was walking past it on the TV, when he flies over in the helicopter and all the cops do the little salute and they look up and everybody in Gotham is just so happy. It's like, I do, damn it, I want to live there. I want to live. I want to live in that Gotham. The Anton First Gotham is fun to look at, but much like owning a supercar, fun to look at, pain in the ass to actually be involved with. I'm going to sit over here in the eco car in the sunny Gotham, and the water's clean, and the schools are nice, and we can solve our problems by surfing. This is great. This is where I want to live.
Bill, I love it. That is the thing that comes to me, Bill, out of your trilogy. Like, it's a Maniac put it together in the best way possible, right? Like, if you're trying to sell this in a room, an executive is not buying it.
No, this is instead of the Jim Cameron writing the $ thing next to Aliens, he walks into the room, just puts the Viewmaster down,
just punches somebody in the face.
I'll take my check now.
But I guarantee your trilogy would be the one that withstands the test of time of like, remember when they did this for Batman trilogy? And I love 100%. That. Absolutely. And I think, quite frankly, it's what I want to be made. Like, I just need something so completely off the wall, That'll do it. Well, to round out my trilogy, we do get a lot of origin in whatever version we're giving. I think mine will come in the vignettes that happen in the second one, right? When they're retelling Ego the way it is. It's very much here, bam, 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 where he's fighting with himself. The third one is going to open with Catwoman like ripping the vines off of Batman's chest. They get in they get him out of the trance, right? The poison ivy trance. And as we're doing this, we'll have seen the ramifications of everything that's happening in Long Halloween. And so the movie will follow this second half of Long Halloween to conclude the mystery of it all, get your Two-Face storyline in there. You'll get your villains that have kind of come up and arose throughout him being in his trance. They were kind of in the shadows and such, but it's not like they never existed. It's just now they've all banded together, and now they think they're running the town. They're running Gotham. And it's Batman kind of realizing he's never going to win, but if he focuses on one detective issue, one gumshoe moment, he can solve that one and then move on to the next one. So it's the coming to terms with you can't solve every problem, but I'm Batman and I'm going to solve as many as I can methodically and thoughtfully. And we get that ending to Long Halloween. Additionally, read Long Halloween if you want all the little details, everyone. But we find out, we get the Two-Face, we get the holiday killer, we get everything like that. But with the rise of these villains and being more predominant over the city, we also are getting vignettes and side stories of all of the superheroes that we've kind of been seeing in the background. And I want a kind of cap to the movie of being like a Superman sitting at the table, like conflicted that they have wiped Batman's memory and that we have realized that they've been at arm's length because they actually did Batman dirty, which has been causing so many more problems and making him conflicted in the second movie and realizing he has no one to rely on because they had mind wiped him. And then we get rid of the whole weirdness of Identity Crisis and the murder mystery, and it just kind of gets peppered over this trilogy that if it'll give us rewatch capability to see where those little pieces came in. And that would be our Superman coming in at the end. Our Wonder Woman is because they all are like, are we going to do the JLA again? Or do we tell him? Or does he already know? We're all kind of afraid that like, if he's come to terms on this, what does he not come to terms on? And leaves it kind of like depressed but open-ended and realizing that like all heroes are fallible, but Batman can still get the bad guy.
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm going with that.
I feel like yours works so well as like a mini series almost.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, I want it to be a trilogy, but like, I don't think it would be like 3-4 hour movies.
Yeah. I feel like yours needs to be a mini series. It would work so well, though.
I feel like there would be a great ending for Rob's story if at one of the very last scenes it just pans away from the Bat computer and sitting there as a file folder, and on it's just written one word and it just says "Outsiders."
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, I was just going to end it with everyone doing the Batusi, but
that works.
You
too.
could do that.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Batman dance anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the sex repellent bat spray, I think, is what that is. Don't try to do that in real life. It doesn't go well.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I wouldn't do it in a business meeting, but
no. But I mean, things are different. I mean, if I have to sell it to the Finch man, I'll Batusi all night long.
That's how I'm going to back it. That's how I'm going to back out of the room after I put the ViewMaster on the table. I'm just going to
that's right. Yeah.
Right back out the door.
Well, Dr. DC, you want to bring us to a close here?
I know where he's going with this. I'm so excited.
I have a feeling I do as well, based on what you guys suggested I read in Toronto.
So,
there we go.
We started with Tower of Babel.
Uh-huh.
And then we've taken Batman's allies away.
The craziest because like the people by the time they get to this movie, they're like, what the fuck was that first movie?
We've done Arkham Asylum. We've taken his identity, his confidence, everything away. And he's hung up the cape.
Yeah.
When we open on this third movie, the Bat family has stepped in to fill the gap in Gotham. And they're doing that. And Bruce Wayne is just trying to be Bruce Wayne. And we get that sort of thing of them trying to like contact him for like business. And he's like, no, I'm out. We get some of that. And Bruce Wayne is maybe doing the thing that's sometimes a criticism in the comics. He's trying to do more Bruce Wayne stuff with his wealth to help Gotham. And then something happens and the Bat family starts dropping, like getting injured, getting kidnapped, whatever. And it's like the city is turning on the Bat family. And we realize the people that have been pulling the strings the whole time are the Court of Owls. So my third film is an adaptation of Court/Night of the Owls.
Oh, yeah.
Where basically Batman, where I'm taking the idea of like Batman has to come back, Dark Knight Returns style, but that thing where I wanted him to build himself back up as Batman. So he doesn't even know the city anymore, because that's the big thread of that Court of Owls story, is that this thing that Batman took for granted was like, this is my city. And then all of a sudden he was like, how was this thing here the whole time and I didn't know, or whatever. So Batman, basically, the family is being like kind of attacked and incapacitated, he is back to being just one person who has to rediscover his mission and who doesn't have all of the stuff you take for granted of like, this is my city. And the reason I'm saying like kind of slash is some of the Court of Owls stuff in the book is that like the psychological thing that we sort of got that with the Arkham Asylum thing.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially Batman goes up against the Court of Owls. He rescues the family and then with the family takes them down. So that like the arc of these movies as a trilogy is starts with a team, strip away like his motivation, all this stuff. He loses his allies, he loses his mojo, he loses his city, but then but his family is like the one unshakable thing, and they, unseat the Court of Owls and save the day and save Gotham, and he's back as Batman. And that's kind of like the trajectory of those movies.
Where wasn't he part of Justice League in the first one?
Like you could put a thing where like Superman's like, or he's like, I'm ready to come back, or like whatever.
Yeah.
Like
I just love
you could do some shit
your
like that.
Movie
But
starts.
I know, like in any, I think normal sense, these are wildly out of order.
It's reversed.
But
I
yeah,
love
that's my art, because I like the idea of like the Justice League and the allies are one thing, but like to the outsider's point, Batman's had lots of teams, and Batman even in the cartoon is like, I'm a part-timer. The Justice League's that's not the most important relationship. So, you set it up where you're like, oh shit, like the Justice League doesn't trust him anymore. It feels big as an audience, but like, I want the family to be the thing, because that's what's missing in so many Batman movies is the Bat family, his legacy, that thing that he was questioning, like, am I doing the right thing? Are my motivations right? Are my methods right? His ultimate success story is the family. All of these people that he's saved from other kind of like traumatic lives, or people that he's inspired to stand up for what's right, people that he has helped train to like defend the city and stuff like that. That's like the ultimate proof that Batman works. And so putting that at the end feels like if the first movie's questioning the idea of Batman, the third movie has to say like the world needs a Batman and here's why. And so for me, it's the family.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
I really, really like that. I liked all of our trilogies. Quite frankly, I think that Hollywood should be knocking on our door now that the strikes are.
I mean, it's funny because I think like mine is like the perfect marketable trilogy that would make a ton of money, but is like very much like what you would expect. I think that Reed's is for like the comic book nerds who like really know about all of the lore and want the bigger DC universe and like are like a deep cut fan and like understand really who Batman is and are coming in for the love of that. I think yours is like this great mini series that you get to like really like dive into like what's great about Gotham and like pay homage to this incredible like really two stories that are amazing. And then you got what I think we need, which is honestly like the it's the same thing with like 007 where it's like, let's just go back to the 60s for a little bit. Like, let's just like hit reset, do something fun for once, like be fucking crazy. And then we can go back to dark and gloomy. But like, I think like it's like the breath of fresh air that it's like, okay, you can't get darker than the Batman now. It's like, it's gotten so fucked up that it's like, we actually have serial killers. It's like, okay. And I love it. And I loved it. But it's like that's the like refresh palate cleanser that we all need. Let's just like remember the Batman was stupid and fun for a little bit.
Yeah,
I love that. Each of us brought a little something that I think that we all needed.
Yeah, I agree.
It was incredible. Well,
it was a blast.
Yeah, gents, really happy to have you on the podcast. I would be remiss if we didn't allow you to entice our listeners by telling them just a little bit about your podcast and Patreon as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. You love the DC conversations that we're having here. There's lots of comic book conversation. Well, we're doing the exact same thing over on our other podcast, the Dr. DC podcast, named after the man himself.
Yeah, it's available wherever you get your podcasts. We answer listener questions on different topics. So it's a great way to jump in. You don't need to know anything. I have a personal rule that I only answer things basically off the dome. So I'm relying on my memory, and
I've never gotten anything wrong, and no one's ever corrected.
And I've never gotten anything wrong. Yeah,
because everyone on the internet's really nice about that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Great.
I think what's fun about our show is if you want to know precisely what issue something happened in, that's what the internet's for. But if you want to like a discussion like this, or like explore like what some of these things mean, or like how these characters interact and stuff like that, those are the kind of conversations I like to have over there.
But if you do want to correct him, well, we have a great place for that, because if you jump onto our Patreon, you get access to a bunch of extra content. Some of it is DC related, some of it, I mean, this whole month we've just been doing challenges with each other, trivia, we've been doing truth or dare. This whole month is dedicated to that. The prior month was all about food, but then also you get access to our online forum where you can really tell your feelings to the doctor.
Yeah, so patreon.com/Dr. DC. There's lots of ways to get involved, lots of extra content, like Richard said. And we just like geeking out. Like, what's nice about the Patreon is Star Trek, Star Wars, Lego, like anything is sort of fair game over there. So yeah, if you enjoy hanging out and chatting comics with us, then you might enjoy hanging out and chatting other things with us too.
But also, to tie back to The Long Halloween, if you watched the animated movie, well, then you may recognize a voice of Jensen Ackles as Batman. And I say that because we have a whole other podcast that's all about the TV show that he got famous from, which is Supernatural. We have Ghostfacers, a Supernatural rewatch.
Yeah, we're going through literally every single episode of 15 seasons of Supernatural. We're partway into season 8 at this point.
So we're basically near the end, right?
Yeah, but yeah, we're getting there. Yeah.
Good
smash cut
luck.
to like me as an old man, like season 15 episode.
I've got to use 17 adapters to get the DVD to work on my computer.
Truly. Yeah.
I have a feeling you guys actually have that Batcave set up, which is like 10,000 screens, and they're all just little ones, big ones, but they're all just playing Supernatural, just one episode after the other after the other.
Oh, hell
God.
yeah.
Yeah, that's how we should have done it. We should have reviewed every episode at once.
Yes.
At the same damn time.
Be the longest podcast in history. I would like to throw out my personal recommendation for their show. I'm new to it, but I've listened to a couple episodes. They are fun. They're great. It's great conversation. Comic book people or not comic book people, it's a good talk. And I know one of them hit particularly close to home for me because you have an episode about the Star Trek comics. And
yeah,
I personally have a great love for those comics and wish they would see a lot more use in media. So if you want to get into any of the other stuff, it's great. Go listen to them. And for sure, we don't do two-faced recommendations here. I've actually listened enough to make the pun. So go up, give them a listen, subscribe, and support.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us, y'all. Of course, this episode is outside of the paywall, everyone, but we too have a Patreon, listeners, patreon.com/BillAndRobs, where you can get all of our bonus content too, like our most recent series, Rob-O-Ween, where I subjected Bill to some of the best and worst horror movies I have on my Plex right now. So if you'd like to check out those, go for it. And if not, hey, enjoy our outside of the paywall episodes too. We don't have fans, we've got friends. I'd like to thank our the people who composed our theme music, Draxium and Dr. Z, as well as Rob Adler for editing this podcast. Richard, Dr. DC, thank you for joining us once again. This has been
Thanks for having us.
All right, goodbye everyone.